Now it's something like $10 billion a year on free healthcare for illegal migrants, the tens of millions of illegal third world migrant savages within the borders of California. You have to understand from California's perspective what it means for us, for Trump, to say we're going to turn that money off. That's a $10 billion Mississippi River of money that right now is flowing through the economy of California. So there's a lot of people making a lot of money from this money being stolen from American citizens to pay for the health care of non-citizens. From California's perspective, you have to understand when they're fighting for this, they're not just fighting philosophically for, oh, we want to provide health care to illegals. I mean, that's part of it, of course. For the leadership, the political leadership of California, those illegals are their actual constituents, not the American citizens who live in California, who largely will not vote for them. And suddenly, Trump were to pass a law saying, I'm eliminating the widget industry. California would be like, holy shit, we just lost $10 billion of annual revenue, annual tax base. That's going to be incredibly destructive, even to our large economy. Progressive lies. As I frequently note, if progressives didn't have lies to tell, they would have nothing to say at all. And that's been a common truth for my entire adult life observing American politics ever since I voted for Ronald Reagan. What's less common is to have an opposition political party, nominally the Republicans, but really MAGA, who's willing to expose the progressive lies in the open, proudly, from the chest, point the finger and say, you lie. And that's exactly what J.D. Vance did from the White House press room, shamelessly, proudly, as he should be.
In terms of health care, the reality is they're just not being honest. The amount of money that actually is going towards people who are undocumented is such a small portion of the Medicaid cuts or the Affordable Care Act.
It's such a small portion.
We can argue that point, but the reality that even the vice president would acknowledge, that anyone who looks at the numbers will acknowledge, is 90 to 95.
So now it's not happening. It is happening, but it's small. Step 2 of the progressive lie cascade. The next step will be, yeah, sure, we're paying for their health care, but that's a good thing. You don't want people to be sick, do you? What kind of monster are you? You don't want people to be sick. Of course we're paying for it. That's a good thing. They should have health insurance. And then step 4 is, you know what? You're a Nazi for not wanting illegal migrants to have health care. Of course it's happening. And the real problem is that you're complaining about it. Here's J.D. Vance again. They ask him, why has Chuck Schumer changed his stance on this? Because he changes his stance based on what the foundation of the progressive fascists. Chuck Schumer himself is not an extremist. He's one of the legacy Democrats left over. He's been there for decades now. I think Chuck Schumer's been senator since the 80s, the late 80s maybe. But he's always changing his mind about stuff because he doesn't have these far left progressive fascist tendencies himself, but he's the head of a party that does very much is controlled by the worst progressive fascists.
You said Chuck Schumer once recognized that it was disastrous to give illegal aliens rewards for breaking the law. Now he wants to shut down the government unless we reward illegal aliens for breaking the law. Why has Chuck Schumer changed his stance?
You know, that's a good question. Actually, it's a very tough question. Asking me to get in the head of Chuck Schumer is not a place I particularly want to be.
You said Chuck Schumer once recognized that it was disastrous.
Who would want to be in the head of Chuck Schumer? And this account notes, it's been crystal clear for weeks who is actually driving the Democrat shutdown. It's their deranged, radical left base. ABC News. Democrats see some potential political advantages to a shutdown with their base voters spoiling for a fight. Progressive Democrats putting party leaders under enormous pressure. Pressure on Schumer from the Democrat base. Democrat senators increasingly see shutting down the government as a political necessity. Democrats cowed by criticism from their left flank. Democrats facing demands from their base voters. Business Insider. Democrats under pressure from their base. It's all the farthest left progressive fascists in the Democrat Party that control that Democrat Party. There are no rational Democrats anymore. They cannot survive. They've all been expelled from the Democrat Party. The Tip O'Neills of the Reagan-era Democrat Party, they don't exist anymore. The Democrat Party of 2025 and for many years prior rejects those moderate Democrats like a human body rejects a foreign tissue, cannot abide it. So the Democrats cannot fix themselves, folks. They cannot moderate. It's impossible. Sometimes I hear people express this fantasy that, well, the left is all the way over here. But we can compromise with them. We can give them a rational argument. No. You cannot reason people out of a position into which they did not reason themselves in the first place. Progressive fascism must be understood as a radical religious faith. If you're of religious faith, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Christianity, whatever your faith might be, if you're a genuine believer, what would shift you from your faith? What reasoned argument would shift you from your faith? Nothing. And that's why nothing can shift a genuine progressive fascist from their faith. The large bulk of people cannot live happily without some faith system they believe in. And if it's not traditional religion, most people will pick something else. And unfortunately, people of a certain demented kind of mind will go to progressive fascism. People of a fascist, tyrannical kind of mind. Rapid Response notes 200 billion unhinged Democrats shut down the government for illegals and non-citizens. And here's the dollar amounts added up, various. Medicaid funding for non-citizens, enhanced funding, emergency care to illegal immigrants, closing the California loophole. By the way, California is a huge problem in all this because it's another indication of the kind of barrier America as a nation is facing as a result of this progressive fascist fecklessness. Couple $100 billion, that's 200 with 9 zeros after it, is what Trump took out with his one big beautiful bill. And that's what the Democrats want to put in here to pass this continuing resolution. By the way, it's only valid for 4 weeks. So the price the Democrats are demanding to vote for this continuing resolution for 4 weeks is $200 billion in free healthcare spending on non-citizens of our nation. Put that in context. So I mentioned earlier that California spends, now it's something like $10 billion a year on free healthcare for illegal migrants, the tens of millions of illegal third world migrant savages within the borders of California. You have to understand from California's perspective what it means for us, for Trump, to say we're going to turn that money off. That's a $10 billion Mississippi River of money that right now is flowing through the economy of California. That is tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, various technicians, hospitals, medical office rents, CVS, Walgreens, drug sales. That is all money that's being consumed by the healthcare system in California. It's being spent. It's being given to people. It's being given to thousands upon thousands of doctors and nurses and technicians and pharmacies and hospitals and emergency, 60-minute care facility. So there's a lot of people making a lot of money from this money being stolen from American citizens to pay for the health care of non-citizens. So from California's perspective, you have to understand when they're fighting for this, they're not just fighting philosophically for, we want to provide health care to illegals. I mean, that's part of it, of course. And they want it to be an attractant, a bait to bring even more tens of millions of illegal migrants into California, because for the leadership, the political leadership of California, those illegals are their actual constituents, not the American citizens who live in California, who largely will not vote for them. But California also sees this as any other industry. Imagine they had any other industry in California that was a $10 billion industry, an industry for making widgets. Let's call them widgets. People like widgets. They buy widgets. They're made in California. It's a $10 billion industry. People's jobs, people's mortgages, people's car payments, people's taxes they pay to the government of California from these wages and earnings. And suddenly, Trump were to pass a law saying, I'm eliminating the widget industry. California would be like, holy shit, we just lost $10 billion of annual revenue, annual tax base. That's going to be incredibly destructive, even to our large economy. So you have to keep that in mind too. That's another reason they're panicked. States that give free health care to illegals, they'd call them, Well, they're documented. California, my home state, Colorado. That's why I'm moving the hell out of here. Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, Vermont, Washington. What do they all have in common, folks? These are all the blue states that are in open insurrection against our national government by facilitating and harboring tens of millions of illegal migrant third world invaders into our nation and harboring them within our nation. By the way, did you know that harboring an illegal migrant, providing shelter, aid, comfort to an illegal migrant in America is a federal felony? 18 U.S.C. 1324. And did you know it's a federal felony that's potentially punishable by execution? Maybe we need to see a bunch of prosecutions under Section 1324. Wake up some of these politicians making these harboring decisions. Execution. I kid you not. I'll show you the statute during the bonus show. Oh, here's the slide I was going to share with you, talking about the economy of California. Wall Street Apes notes, oh my God, this breaks down California enrollments in Medi-Cal by race. You can see Latinx is skyrocketing. Those are the illegal migrants being paid for by California's Medicaid. I was talking about the Medicaid issue, and that's why I think the Democrats are really sticking to that. It's not that they're worried necessarily about people not having health care coverage. They're worried about the catastrophe they've created in places like California. This revenue stream in California, $10 billion, that California created by basically giving Medicaid benefits to undocumented immigrants. All these doctors, all these providers, all these hospitals are relying on this government money for these undocumented people to come to their institutions, and they're going to lose all that revenue. You could be talking about billions of dollars, and we are. It's $10 billion of revenue. These healthcare providers and doctors are going to lose. How is that doctor supposed to pay for his boat if we don't provide free healthcare to undocumented aliens? That's why I think the Democrats are pushing so hard, and I agree. Here's another one. Here it is. Congressional Budget Office confirms that illegal aliens are on free healthcare. The Democrats shut down the government because they demand free healthcare. They say 1.4 million illegals. Obviously, it's 100 times that. There's at least 90 illegal migrant aliens in the nation right now, not to mention the 90 legal ones. God knows how many of them are on free health care that we're paying for. Let's listen to this clip.
Even Governor Newsom in California said that they should revisit having illegal aliens on Medicaid because it is costing, I think, again, and you can fact check this, it's costing California about $12 billion. But remember that the federal government takes up, pays for 90% on the Medicaid expansion. On the FMAP, the shared portion of it. So we're absolutely strengthening Medicaid for those for whom Medicaid was intended.
Poor Americans. Medicaid was intended for poor Americans.